Hi, guys, Facebook friends, family. What's up? Now, I don't usually go live on my personal page. So if I do, something's up. But this is a great eavesdrop. So, those of you who have missed eavesdrop, please hop on and hear what you need to be eavesdropping on in this season. I have a special guest, and it's going to be very informative. This is something that is for everyone. That's why I didn't want to do it in God's favorite girl only, because we need God's favorite guys to hear it as well. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to hop on there. When you get in, share for me. Share, share, share. Let me see what's popping on Facebook. I need to make this public. All right. So you should be able to share it now. Come on in the room. I'm looking for all you people who into some drama. The drama with Miss Mervie and Miss Ingram. That's what we're talking about today. Drama. I think we're also live on GFG. No. Where are we live? On Eavesdrop? Oh, we are live on YouTube and Facebook. So I'm just going to share to GFG. So come on, friends, help me share. And we are going to get right into it because I know we all on a lunch break and we got things to do, right? So I have a special guest all the way from Florida, but he is no guest to the Bahamas because he's a full Bahamian. And I know you've heard me post and talk about the power of a trust. I didn't say trust issues. We're not talking about infidelity. We're talking about a document. A trust is a document that holds and manages assets. That's what we're talking about today. And I think it was a perfect time for us to have this conversation and bring light to it because of what's happening in society today. The drama with Miss Mervie and Miss Philly and Miss Ingrid, it has us in total hysteria. And while people out there making songs and sharing and making noise and doing all that stuff, none of that really solves this problem, right? None of that brings a resolution. And none of that can avoid anyone from being in the situation that they're in now. So let's do grown people stuff. Let's handle our affairs while we have the knowledge, while we have the wisdom, while we have the strength to, so that this is not our story. I think this all happened, this drama all unfolded so that we could do better. When you know better, do better. So I want to share with you how we could do better. And that is why I have Mr. Scott Hall from Skadrovan Estate Planning Company here in Nassau, Bahamas, as well as the mother branch that is in Florida with us. Mr. Hall, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, it's always a treat when I get you to come join us because I know you're going to talk. Well, usually you talk to the young ladies, the women. But today we need to broaden the spectrum and we need to talk to all humanity. male, female, and most importantly, Mr. Hall, I have a love like you. You never let us forget that you're a full Bahamian. But I have a love for these people here. The people like that with that nice melanin. They never kept us up on game. They taught us, or what we've seen forefathers do is get a will or not do anything at all. Let it all throw up in the air and it fall as it may. And that causes families to tear apart. That causes things like what's happening in the media today. Now, I know you being a Bahamian, you know the whole scope of drama. How Miss Mervie take Miss Ingrid house from her family. Now, while we don't know the truth of the matter, and there's always two sides to the story, I think it is necessary for us to have an educated conversation to give real resolutions, real solutions to these issues before they even happen. And when I thought about it, the only solution to this would have been the trust, because God forbid if Miss Ingrid was dead and this had to be a probate issue. Could you imagine? This is a lifetime movie, Mr. Hall. So
Absolutely.
with your knowledge of what's happening in the Bahamas now, in Grand Bahama, particularly now, between these three parties, teach us what should have been done, what could be done to avoid us from being in this predicament.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lockhart. Once again, thanks for having me on. It is really interesting. And naturally, I heard about the situation maybe a couple of days ago. I thought it was very interesting, and I was wondering which one of our trust advisors will call me to share with me in more detail about the situation. So when you called me, I was surprised, but not really, because I know you're kind of up to speed with the scope of things that's happening. But let me say this. So first of all, let me explain, if I may, what a will is. So we understand for many folks, and again, Mrs. Lockhart kind of highlighted the little melatonin in our skin, the little melanin in our skin. Meaning for those of us that are Black folks, let me just say that we are used to living by the will, okay? And I always say the will is nothing more than a dead document. It only comes to life when someone passes. The will only expresses your wishes. It transfers nothing legally. And we need to understand that. I don't care who you go to draft a will, to put a will in place for you. It is not the solution in estate planning. It is an expensive proposition at the end of the day through a process that's called probate upon your passing. Now, naturally, the person that passes, the decedent that's gone on, you don't know what's going on, so you may say it doesn't matter to me. But your estate is being depleted to probate your will. Now, based on what we know that's happened in Freeport the other day, the only thing short of giving the house away to solve that issue was for the lady that went into the nursing home. Again, what's her name, Mrs. Lockhart?
Mrs. Ingrid Carey.
The only thing Mrs. Carey could have done to prevent what happened from happening was for a home to be transferred to a trust. Okay. Now you may say, well, what is a trust? Again, Mrs. Lockhart touched briefly on it. A trust is a legal document that holds and manages assets. A trust is a legal document that holds and manages assets. It is, to elaborate a little bit, it is the relationship between the grantor of the trust, the person having the trust made, and the trustee, which are usually one and the same. So, for example, Ms. Lockhart came to me to put a trust in place, and naturally, she wants to be the trustee of her trust, which means she wants to control her affairs in her lifetime. Upon her death, she has language stipulated in the trust for someone who will be the successor trustee. Now, if Mrs. Carey had transferred her property, the home, to the trust, there's nothing the lady in the nursing home could do other than short of coercion, which I think is what happened, either way. But if Mrs. Carey's daughter knew she was having some issues and she put a trust in place and her daughter was the trustee of the trust, then absolutely nothing can happen between Mrs. Carey and the owner or whoever the person was at the nursing home. So we know, if you're listening to me, if you've got elderly family members, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents, they're beginning to slip a little bit. They're not at full capacity. Full capacity means they're not competent, or they begin in early stages of these preconditions, Alzheimer's and things like that. The memory is not good. They're definitely not in capacity to make those decisions. Then you need to encourage your elderly relative to put a trust in place. And if it's your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, and they have confidence in you and other siblings and other family members agree, then someone else needs to be the trustee other than the person transferring the assets to the trust. So the trust may be made in behalf of my mother, my father, my uncle, aunt, or it could be a sibling. But that person should not be the trustee of the trust. Therefore, if Mrs. Carey goes into Mr. Johnson's nursing home, Mr. Johnson realized there's no one coming around to visit her. She's got no family members. He begins to question her to find out, what do you own, Mrs. Carey? What kind of assets do you have? Oh, I've got an account down at Scotiabank. It's got $100,000 in it. Oh, I've got some property over here in Baintown. I got some property on West Bay Street. It overlooks the water. And he begins to question, oh, do you own the property free and clear? Oh, yeah, I don't have no mortgage. I paid that off. I paid the mortgage 30 years ago. In his mind, now he's thinking, okay, no one's coming to visit. No one seemed to care about her. Now she's going to die. This asset is going to be out there sitting. So he's got his little conniving ways, and he decides, well, let me get some papers drafted up, and you can just nicely give it to me. And it happens. Now, so when he attempts to do that, and Mrs. Carey may sign these documents, when he goes to the registrar or wherever he's going to record these documents, he realizes, oh, wait a minute. Someone at the registrar informs him, well, the person who's transferring the document to you don't own the document. Uh-oh. Now we've got problems. So now that's the trickery and deceit stops right there. Okay? Because the person in the nursing home does not have the authority and they're not in capacity to be able to give you that property.
So,
Now, I
Mr.
know
Hall, what I need to do, right, is bring my people up on speed and give them a 2-minute lesson of what you've been teaching me for the past 3 years, right? So what they don't understand is the trust. The trust is a document that holds and manages assets. The trust owns your assets, and you are the owner of the trust. So it separates you from ownership, yet you still have the benefit of the owner because only you one own the trust. So people sometimes feel, oh, well, I'm giving away my property. Well, you are giving it away to protect it. So that, like Miss Mervie, she can get someone to create some documents and turn it over in her name. Now, the difference between the will and the trust, because people say, oh, well, you could do this stuff in your will. The scary part of this, Mr. Hall, is if Miss Ingrid was dead and that young lady had to go through probate and fight. Well, no, she didn't have to go through probate because now the lady owns the property. Isn't that right?
Probate has been avoided because the property is not owned by her deceased mother.
Wow.
So see, here's the thing. We use sometimes the phrase once, ONCE, own nothing, control everything. So when you transfer your assets to the trust, as the grantor, the maker, or the truster of the trust, it all means the same thing. Those words are used interchangeably. The grantor, the maker, the trustor. That's the person having the trust put in place. That is the person the trust is being made on their behalf. When you do that, you also now the trustee of the trust. So you still control everything. You are the trustee of the trust. The asset is out of your name. Okay? God forbid if something happened to you when that time comes. I know, listen, we all want to live a long time. We want to live to be old and gray. And sometimes this may be a little funny, but old and gray for our family members to beat us up and take advantage of us. Depends on us and things like that. Now, if you live long enough, it's gonna happen. It's okay if you got people that love you and they're caring for you. All right. Your assets are out of your name, but it's in the trust for those that you desire to receive your assets, your stuff. Okay. The trust is the only thing that's going to ensure that that happens. You may say, well, why don't I just put it in their names now while they're alive and I'm alive? Let me just go ahead and give it to them now. I'm not going to pay to put a trust in place. Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Why not? Okay. And I've got the answer for you. It is one of the worst decisions you can make as an adult. I mean, as a parent or an elderly relative, transferring your assets to your adult children. Okay, why is that a bad idea, Mr. Hall? These adult children make bad decisions. They do, for not a nice way to say it. They do dumb things. They do stupid things. They get in debt. They remortgage property. Because if I transfer my home to my son and my son realizes, well, it's in my name, I need to get me a loan. I'm gonna go ahead and refinance the house. I'm gonna take out $100,000 and I'll just make payments. All of a sudden, something happens. He can't make payments. Now we're getting documentation in the mail that said the home is in foreclosure. I become homeless as a senior citizen. Never do that. What also happened to your elderly sons and daughters, excuse me, your children as they get older in life? They get married. Marriages go south. People get a divorce. If I transfer my property into my son's name, he's a good boy. He's not going to do anything wrong. But him and his wife, things are just going bad. They decide to get a divorce. The property that I'm living in now is it's in his name. But if he's married, that is considered marital asset.
Mm-hmm.
It now belongs to Scott Jr. and Mary Hall or whatever they are. Okay. Now they get a divorce. Either he must have the monies to pay me off. I want 50%. Or the property has to be sold for me to get my percentage. And now my elderly mother has to leave. And God forbid, if I have a home, or if I don't, she goes to an apartment or she has to come live with me. So it is always more advantageous for you to put your assets, to create a trust, and for assets to be transferred to a trust. So all of this big process is called estate planning. Okay. And what is estate planning? Simply put, it is nothing more than putting your affairs in order. What is the trust to the estate plan? The trust is the centerpiece. It is the foundation of the estate plan, not a will. And I repeat, not a will. Now, I know there's different opinions with lawyers and trust professors and so forth on how this should be handled. Okay. I want to live life knowing that if something happened to me, I know who's going to get my house in the mountains, my house in the valley, my house on the ocean, my house on the lake. I know who's going to get my boat, whatever it is that I have. The only thing that ensures that is the trust. And Ms. Lockhart, if I might add, most of us that put a trust in place, it is going to be irrevocable trust.
Mm-hmm.
It is a trust that can be changed. You can make amendments. If you want to cut out one of your kids because they're knucklehead, they want to do bad things, you can cut them out. If you want to reduce what you desired to give them initially, you can change that. That's called an amendment. Now, upon your death, the trust becomes irrevocable. That means nothing in the trust that you stipulated in life can be changed. Okay? Nothing that you stipulated in life can be changed. Again, if Mrs. Carey had a trust and her daughter was the trustee of that trust, the woman, whoever she is, that connived, or whatever you want to call it, schemed to have the home transferred to her name, that would have never happened, because the daughter would have been notified that a mom is trying to sign documents to transfer the properties to someone else, and the mom is not the owner of the property. Now, I know I'm saying a lot, and Inky, is going to be up to you when these folks start calling you and bothering you. You've got to kind of make sense to them and qualify some of the things that I'm saying.
Well, Mr. Hall, you made sure that we're prepared to handle these types of questions and these types of situations. So thank you so much for that. But I have a question for you. Would you happen to have a trust a prepared document on your desk that you can show us so that they can see these are not just loose papers that anyone can take out, change, put in what they want to. And we've explained why it's so important for the elderly to have it. And what we have seen, Mr. Hall, is an uprise in adult children paying for the trust for their parents, the elderly ones. Why? Because they understand the horrors of probate. So when you have to go through probate court, you're coming up with so much money to pay an attorney, and you have to depend on a judge's good will, I guess, to agree with what your parents said that they think you should have. And God forbid if a debtor was to rise up and say, "Hey, well, John Kerry, he owed me money from 1900 and he never paid me back," then you could take a cut off of what you thought that your parents left for you. Go ahead, Mr. Hall, show us that trust.
Okay, so this with our firm, when your trust is completed, this is what it looks like. Now let me tell you something about this book. In this book, when you put your trust in place, you get 2 copies of this. This is probably 90 to 100 plus pages, okay? Everything about your life is in this document. This document is not something that anyone can pick up and make changes to it. This document, there's a hardback books, similar to maybe what your yearbook is made of. In the middle of this book is a metal shank, okay? You cannot use your tools at the house in the garage to open the book. You can make an attempt, but once you do that, you're going to damage the book. It takes a special machine to open this book, because the same book that I'm showing you, if you need to make amendments, you need to make changes, we can open the book at Scrijovan Trust Planning Company and Scrijovan Estate Planning Company. We can open the book, insert the pages that are signed, notarized, and so forth, and put them into the book and close it back, and it's returned back to you. Now, it is a good feeling knowing that I've got my trust in place. God forbid, I like to travel, I move around, I do some little risky things. I want to live a long time. But if something happened to me, everything about my life, my assets, what I have is right here. How I want to be buried. I've made it real clear to my wife, my children, that if something would have happened to me, I don't want to be cremated. I don't want to go in a vault above ground. I don't even want to go in the grave. I want to be kept in a glass casket in the living room. Okay. Now, I know that's not going to happen. I'm just being funny. But basically what I'm getting at, whatever you want to happen to your body when the time comes, it's also here. Now, you make sure you appoint a successor trustee who becomes the trustee, who is only going to act based on what you have stipulated in this document. So if you're looking at this right here, this is where the name of the person who this trust is made for is. I kind of blotted it out so you can't see that. But again, some people use a 3-ring binder. I don't believe in the 3-ring binder because anyone can make some changes and do a little trickery with that. Okay. It is very easy to access a 3-ring binder, and make changes to it. So with our firm, a trust is a very secure document.
So, Mr. Hall, let's talk about the solidity of the trust here in the Bahamas as well as in America. But the trust is not just a textbook that we keep on, the mantle in the living room or the dining room. These documents are recorded with the Registrar General's Department. So if someone wants to transfer the ownership of a home that belongs to the trust, they would definitely find that this person does not even own the trust. The house is owned by the trust.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So when you put your trust in place, the trust comes with a number of documents to complete your estate plan. It includes the declaration, first of all. In the declaration, it talks about the date of the trust, the name of the trust, the trustee, the grantor of the trust, and the beneficiary. And Article 1, I believe, may talk about who the primary beneficiary is. Normally, the primary beneficiary is the grantor of the trust. It also talks about the contingency beneficiary, my children, my nieces, my nephews, my best friend. Okay. That section also includes what they get, the percentages, my firearms, my cars, my boats, my assets, whatever it is that I own. It is stipulated in that section. The trust also comes with a certificate, which is a 3-page document that also includes an affidavit. The affidavit says that this person is who they said they were when they came to the individual to put the trust in place. It also includes, and by the way, that certificate is used of you in lieu of you having to take your entire trust to conduct business on behalf of the trust. It also includes a healthcare surrogate, someone who will make medical decisions for you when you couldn't make them for yourself. So naturally, the lady, Miss Carey, her daughter should have been down as a healthcare surrogate, and also her durable power of attorney. Durable power of attorney, not just power of attorney. So you have durable power of attorney, which means you can do for you and I can do for you. Okay, it goes both ways. Power of attorney, simply put, is limited and specific to what I cannot do for myself. I'm not available. I'm away out of the country. I'm in the hospital or I'm incarcerated, whatever it is. That's power of attorney. But durable power of attorney can serve in that capacity as well. It also includes your asset transfer forms. And in our document that we draft, it says asset transfer forms wherever located now belongs, in this case, to the blank Lockhart Family Trust. Okay. It includes warranty deeds or quitclaim deeds. I'm going to speak about warranty deeds. A warranty deed, like a conveyance, it is you transferring your property from your personal name, in this case, Ms. Lockhart, to the Lockhart Family Trust. The conveyance does the same thing. Once that warranty deed is drafted, it is now recorded at the clerk of the court's office in some countries or domicile where you domicile, or or to the registrar's office, wherever you record your properties. The home now on Palmetto Drive or the home on Bay Street, if you drive by the home and you see the address number 10 Bay Street, and you want to go back to the registrar's office and just do some research to find out who owns the home, even though you may see Ms. Lockhart going in the home, when you research the record and you pull up the information, if the trust does not bear her name, it may say the G&G Private Investment Trust. So you really don't know who owns the home. All you see is the name of the trust. You may see the trustee. Now, she is the trustee. As the trustee, it doesn't mean she owns the home. She's just acting in that capacity. Okay? So the trust gives you anonymity. It also gives you privacy. The trust also includes what's called a pour-over will. The pour-over will is for assets that's not yet transferred to the trust. In a nutshell, a trust may sound real cumbersome, sophisticated, real big, and it may be all of that. But little old you and I, Ms. Lockhart, we can all have a trust. This is not something that's so far out of reach for you. Not so far out of your budget that you can't afford it. Well, let me just bring it home to you, okay? And let me tell it like it is, not is, T-I-S. You have to do it. If you own a home, a car, land, I don't care if it's landlocked and you can't even sell it. If you own property in any capacity, anything that bears a legal title, if you want to know that you know it's going to go to John, Mary, your daughters, your children when you pass, the easiest way for that to happen without major expenses is a trust. A trust, the cost of the trust is not even 5% of the value of the estate. It is minuscule. Okay. And I will say this, not just because I'm the one that do this type of work. If my dad had a house and he wanted to leave me in the house or part beneficiary, but he said, well, I'm not paying to put this asset in the trust. I'm going to go to the other beneficiaries and say, listen, Daddy doesn't want to do this, but we know this is the best thing for us to do. We need to pay for this to get done. Because as Daddy gets older, we better pray one of us is around, that we are around, because we don't want a situation to repeat as to what happened in Freeport. Now, we don't have all the facts. So at this point right now, legally, I'm going to say it is alleged. And I use that with a smile on my face. It is alleged that Mrs. So-and-so got Mrs. Carey to sign these documents to put the property into her name. That's right now, that's only an allegation. The court of law is going to have to prove, is going to gather the facts, and they're going to rule on that. Uh, and I know in the Bahamas, I can imagine the storylines because one of the stories I've gotten is a little different than what I heard this morning. So there are all kinds of stories out there. Let's let the courts give the final say so. It's okay to have our opinion. And I understand some of you are making songs and things like that, got little riddles going, little rhymes and all that. But Inky, to avoid all that, don't be one lined up to be talked about as in similar fashion. Do the right thing. For those of you listening to me, Ms. Inky, what she's giving you today, I can't even put value on it. Okay, to get this information for free, I'm in the business of collecting fees. I like to collect fees. I like to get paid, but you got me for free today. Tomorrow, I don't know what the cost may be. So you need to contact Ms. Mackey and at least get a little bit more understanding and probably put a trust in place to get your affairs in order. Wait a minute. Did I say Ms. Mackey? Or should I say Ms. Lockhart? Ms. Lockhart, I think I made a mistake there. I meant to say actually Ms. Lockhart. Ms. Mackey is a partner with us, but we're not talking about Ms. Mackey right now. We're talking about Ms. Lockhart. Are you done, Ms. Lockhart?
Mr. Hall, I can see you, but I can't hear you. And one device went down. But we're not going to let that stop us because this information is too important.
Yeah, I can see you and I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Hall?
Loud and clear.
Wow, loud and clear. Well, I'm going to read your lips. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, though, thank you. The other thing I wanted to touch on, though, is you have already covered the dual power of attorney. You have covered the healthcare surrogate. These are the things that the will does not cover. I think what's important for us to note is how this will versus trust work. And I've spoken to a lot of Bahamians, and they've all said, well, I don't have anyone to contest the will. I'm the only child. Nothing's going to happen. We don't even understand how these the after effect of the wills. So they tell us to, go and put your affairs in order and get yourself a will, but they don't tell us the whole story. What's going to happen next? You must go through probate regardless if you're the only person that you're the only inheritor. You must go through probate even if your family didn't leave a will, which is the scary part. Mr. Hall, explain to us how the trust works that helps us to avoid having to see an attorney, having to sit before a judge, having to relinquish our control and depend on the judge to side with us, for lack of a better term, in what we know our parents' wishes would have been.
Okay, so let me say this. If you die without a will, it's called dying intestate. Dying intestate. It doesn't mean the state gets your stuff. It means there's no basis to begin. So now everybody is showing up and there are challenges from everywhere. Even if you're an only child and you're next to kin, it doesn't mean that everything is coming automatically to you with a will or without a will. Anyone can challenge the estate in probate. Now, probate is for everybody that dies without a trust in place. Again, with a will or without a will. And I've said earlier, having a will is nothing more than expressing your wishes. It transfers nothing legally. In order for one to receive your assets upon your death when you die, with a will or without a will, you have to go to probate court. Probate means hiring an attorney, paying whatever the fees are, 5, 10, 15%, based on what country you're in, what state you're domiciled in. Okay. All the fees has to be paid before the assets are distributed. So before you inherit anything, the judge wants the estate costs to be settled. Now, if you're my friend and you die with a will, and let's just say you didn't owe me, or let's just say you owed me $20,000, but I want to be a little dishonest and I say, well, you owed me actually 50,000. I may even have some documents that said, you signed the document, and the signature may be legitimate. But for some reason, we were such good friends. You trusted me, I trust you, and you sign a blank document. Now I fill in $50,000 and it's dated appropriately. I'm going to hire my lawyer and I'm going to make a claim against your estate. And I'm going to get my $50,000 if the estate has proceeds for me to get that. I will get my monies before you get yours. All the debts and expenses are settled in probate court before the assets are distributed, before things are disseminated. But if I owe Ms. Lockhart $50,000 legitimately, okay, but I did all of this before I put a trust in place. Now I put a trust in place, still owing her $50,000. That debt was done in my personal name. All of my assets are in my trust. And this is not something I would intentionally do. But if I transfer all my assets to the trust and I die, Miss Inky is left out holding the bag. She's left in the cold. Because
Mr. Hall, can I jump in there?
Sure.
Do you know that that's a true life story? So I hired a lawyer to do some work for me, and he was supposed to pay me back because he didn't do the work. He paid back $1,000, told us we need to come back for another $1,000. He was paying us an installment. You know that man dead, Mr. Hall. He died, and me and my husband sitting now watching the newspaper every week because we were waiting on his probate. Until I heard someone else saying that he did the same thing to them, and that he owed them money and they were waiting on the probate too. Then I got in a conversation with another colleague and she said, oh, sorry, that family had a trust. My heart dropped. He had a trust, so I could never get my money back.
No, because you can sue him all day long. There's nothing in his name. There's nothing to be had. Now, I'm not saying put a trust in place after you've gone around Nassau or the Bahamas and getting loans from everybody. I wouldn't encourage that. Ethically, morally, however you want to put it, that's wrong. But a trust bypasses probate. All of your assets in the trust, first of all, the courts has no jurisdiction over the trust. The courts in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas has no jurisdiction over the trust. Upon your death, if you have a successor trustee who now becomes the trustee, they are the person, that is the individual that would manage the affairs of the trust, that will see to it all the beneficiaries receive what they should, what's stipulated in the trust. Now, assets in the trust goes from the trust under the direction of the trustee to the said beneficiaries. Okay, you don't need to go to hire a lawyer. You don't need the judge. You don't need nobody. All you need is documentation to transfer assets from the trust now to the individuals. It's a smooth process. But for many of us, when we hear the word trust, we think you got to be rich, you got to be sophisticated, you got to have a lot of money, or let me just bring it home. That's for I need to be an MP or a senator, or I'm Bishop so and so, or I'm just some dignitary. I'm sophisticated. I think even if you just a run-of-the-mill guy, if you want to call it that, you sophisticated once you put the trust in place. Why are you sophisticated? You've done the right thing to preserve and to perpetuate your legacy. Okay, you've done the right thing to preserve and to perpetuate your legacy. So for those of you that like to run around, oh yeah, I've got my will, man. My will is with my pastor. It's with my lawyer. That means nothing to me. That doesn't impress me. Okay, because understand this, and you can tell your lawyer. There's some guy on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you see me. He told me that, man, I wasted my money because the will is nothing more than a dead document. It does nothing for you in life. It does not come alive until somebody dies. Who wants something like that? I want asset protection during my lifetime. And I want to know that even my little bad son who done disrespect me a certain time, if I want to only give him $5 and I want him to receive it, I can put that in the trust. He may not want the $5, but he's going to get it. It's going to be, and then he's going to be able to read the documents. Okay, the trust guarantees the assets go to who you want them to go to. The will says maybe. That's at the judge's discretion. Now the judge makes the final decision. Now I'm not saying the judge is going to go way off course, but if you got 10 people fighting, you got issues. So in my opinion, also the will does nothing more. In my opinion, it destroys relationships. At best, it scars relationship. It drives family apart. Now I'm not going to say to you if you don't believe it, then see what happens. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want that to happen. So what should you do? Put a trust in place.
And Mr. Hall was saying that one of the things I watched a clip with the daughter of Miss Ingrid today, and she told the news that her mother was always generous. Her mother would always give away the clothes of her back. So she's not surprised that her mother may have told Miss Mervie, hey, I want to give you my house, because that's what type of person she was, but worse because maybe she is going through dementia. Now, the thing is, if she had a trust, she could promise everyone all her life that they could get this house. But the trust would have protected her assets. Just before you go, Mr. Hall, we can't let you go without talking to God's favorite girls. So the last time we had you on, you told us how to protect ourselves before we get married. And so I see Mr. Curry on our live. So since some men listening to us, and this is not really eavesdrop, but they are eavesdropping, we want to tell the men too how to protect themselves. Because I had a cousin, he built his house out of pocket. Right when he was finished, about to be finished, he got married. He moved the woman into his house, and that was the marital home. She up and says, her mother needs to come and live. Her father needs to come. Her brother got put out. So she moved her whole family in his house. And then that was the deterioration of the marriage right there. Eventually, they filed for divorce. But guess what she said? I need a half of this house because this is my marital home. And so he is forced to sell so that he can pay her out, because he cannot go to the bank and get a mortgage to pay her out. He can't qualify.
Did he? Well, go ahead. Let me not interrupt you.
Well, that's the end of the story. So that's one story. The other way is, of course, we know that women, who run the world? Girls. We usually get our properties before you men. And we start doing something, and then you come along and you're the knight in shining armor. And then, after the wedding ceremony is finished and the excitement dies down, they decide that they want to have a little thing on the side. So you know where I'm going with this. So teach us now how to protect ourselves even in life, because people think, well, they run for a will, and a will is only testamentary after death. It only becomes alive after death. The trust protects you in life and after death.
So let me say this. Let me speak to the fellas first. Since you on this medium being so biased about you and God's favorite girls. wait, I don't know why you think God have y'all as the favorite girls.
All of us.
What about God's favorite boys?
It's God's favorite guy.
God's favorite guys. Okay. So fellas, I'm going to speak to the fellas first. Listen, if you're listening to me and you're single, you got some assets, you itching, you can't wait to get married, especially some of y'all fellas in the church, you're not supposed to be doing anything. You're supposed to be living holy, living right. But the woman has told you, well, there's nothing happening between us until you marry me. You put a ring on my finger. Okay, and you want to live right. Now, you may be in your mid-40s, maybe in your 50s, you may be 70. You may be one of those bishops and the wife died, and now you want to marry Sister Sue that used to sit on the front row of the church, and y'all might have been looking at each other when you weren't supposed to. But now you got a lot of assets. You got some children that want to get your assets if something happened to you. Let me say this to you. You don't need to present Sister Sue with a prenuptial agreement, because immediately just the sound of the prenuptial agreement, it's saying if. Okay, that's the conjunct. This may not work. If this doesn't work, you keep what you came with, and I keep what I came with. You can bypass all that, and you can forgo all that, and you can act. Matter of fact, you can act a little naive and vulnerable. So what you do, you come see me, or you talk to Ms. Lockhart, and she'll direct you to see me, and you say, I heard this trust can serve as my prenuptial. It can substitute the prenuptial. It tells me I don't need the prenuptial. I transfer all of my assets to the trust, and to the woman that may just be looking at me just because of what she think I have, my stuff, my fancy house in West Bay Street, my fancy house in the East on Yamacraw Beach or wherever you have it. She said, well, I know I'm going to live in this house with him. Okay, that's fine. That's true. Now, you transfer your house in the trust, the cars in the trust. You make the trust the owner of your bank accounts. You make the trust the owner of your boat, your properties in Cat Island, Exuma. You got a vacation home in Florida. You make the trust the owner of everything, absolutely everything. And you continue to date her and you don't discuss nothing. But you let her know, well, listen, honey, if we get married, I'm going to take care of you. Now you wait. Now, as a man, that's how we need to do it as men. We wait until after we've gotten married and we say, listen, I'm going to take care of you as long as we're married. Now, but I just want you to know if something happened to me, I have a trust in place. So you act oblivious. You like, wow, all of a sudden, yeah, I have a trust in place. If something happened to me, these things in place for my children. My son, my daughter, my grandchildren from my previous relationship. Now, if the woman is what we call a gold digger, or she's interested in your stuff, she's going to be like, oh, really? So what about me? Well, honey, no, I'm going to take care of you, honey. Whatever we amass together as a couple, that's marital asset. But this house we living in, I don't own this house. Well, honey, who owns the house? Well, the trust owns the home. And you just end that right there. Now, you got to be smart enough, smooth enough to just change the conversation. Maybe talk about dinner or something. What we're going to eat tonight. What we're going to do after dinner. You got to be real smooth. Else she gonna beat you down until you change that trust. Don't have no pillow talk at night talking about the trust. Because some of y'all weak and y'all will give in to get whatever little action y'all want. Y'all start making changes to the trust, promising to make changes to the trust. Now, as I said that to the men. Now we know in divorce, women tend to get the short end of the deal. Now I love my sisters, and I hate to see women getting taken advantage of. I don't like a woman taking advantage of a man or using a man, a weak man. So women, let me say this to you. Y'all love real strong. Y'all love real strong. And y'all want to give everything to the fella before you get married and certainly after you get married. Some of y'all who say y'all saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, all of a sudden, the Holy Ghost goes around the corner when y'all want to act like y'all weak and y'all making mistakes. Which y'all not making no mistakes. Y'all know exactly what y'all are trying to do to tie these fellas down. Okay? Now, after you done tease the fella a little bit, and all of a sudden you say, well, I'm really saved and I'm supposed to live right. I don't want to do that no more. And I'm God's favorite girl. I'm a part of that organization too. I really can't live like that. I want to keep my testimony. Okay, that's fine. Well, let me say this to you. Now I'm going to give you some advice. You don't need, because you the permanent secretary over here, you the CFO of this company, you an accountant, you a CPA, you got some assets, you may even be a member of parliament. You got a lot of stuff going on, but you don't have love. You want to get married. You like the house that you live in. You don't want to live in his house because this house is not in the nicest neighborhood. It's not conducive for your style. So, honey, you can come live with me. And then being a man, you say, well, honey, okay, that's fine. You got the nice house. We can put my house on rent or we can sell it. But I'm going to come live with you because I'm going to pay all the bills anyway. Okay, she's smiling all the way to the bank once you say that. But now I'm encouraging the women. You got to do this. You must. Before you let that man spend a night in your house as a married man, you must transfer your assets to the trust. Because once you get married, that house becomes his homestead, especially if you are in any states in America. If you get married, the primary residence becomes your homestead. That's the marital home now. And he will have access to that home. And God forbid, if you die before him, he can remarry and move his new spouse into that home and live there until he dies, unless there's some legal issues in place, like a life estate that allows him to live there until he passes, and then it comes back to your side. So, ladies, if you're listening to me, I'm saying a lot, and you don't understand, you can reach out to Miss Lockhart, and you can reach out to me, but she can get you in touch with me. But you must put a trust in place to protect what you have before you get married. After you get married, you're stuck. Okay, before you get married. Now, for those of you that's, I think Mr. Lockhart mentioned something about the side lady or something like that. I know they got a name for it. They call it in the Bahamas. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's called the sweetheart, right? The Bahamian man and the sweetheart. Now, what I've learned lately with some of my Bahamian female clients, they have sweethearts also, but they don't like to talk about that. But fellas, if you have a sweetheart, and I'm not encouraging this, fellas, if you have a sweetheart, you need to stop it. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Good
There ain't
comeback.
nothing else I can tell you, because the sweetheart is going to cause you some problems. The sweetheart is going to cause you some problems. Now, you can just change the name that you call the sweetheart. Just call her something else. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. If you got a sweetheart, fellas, you need to cut it out, man. Cut it out. Be faithful to that woman. Y'all live life and just have a good time together, and just pray for God to bless y'all, and you have a good legacy you leave into your children. You don't want your legacy to be that I was a Rolling Stone. I got 20 kids. I got 15 kids. I got 11. You know, there are a lot of men out there right now that have died in the Bahamas. Their legacy is, I was a father of many. No, I might have fathered many, but I wasn't a father to many. Understand the difference. Anyone can drop a seed. Dropping a seed is just an initial physical interaction between the opposite sex. But when that child comes into this world, now you must be a father. Okay. You can also perpetuate your legacy in the trust. Now, that's another topic. Okay. Perpetuating your legacy in the trust. All right. So I'm going to stop for a second. But let me just say this. Now, I know we like to quote this scripture, a lot of us, and children like to quote this scripture too. The daddy, in the Bible, it says a good father leaves inheritance to his children's children. So they're looking for their inheritance, their stuff. Now, you can perpetuate whatever you want your kids to have in the trust. Some time ago, we talked with my dad about a trust years ago before he really wanted to do that. And my dad started telling us that we all are grown, you can do for yourself. But at some point, he got the pitch and he decided to put a trust in place. So understand this. The trust is the document in which you perpetuate your legacy in the future. Okay. You got to take heed to what we're saying. Even though a not so pleasant situation prompted this conversation that we're having today. Okay. So let's learn from that situation and let's do the right thing. As Lockhart said earlier, when you know better, you do better. When you learn from someone's mistake, you do the right thing. Now, I hope and pray that this situation gets resolved. And the woman who was accused of this, I don't wish nothing bad on anyone, but if this really what happened, she should quietly do the right thing and let this go away. Now, that's all I have to say on that. I can't speak with authority on that. I'm a Bahamian for real. I am a son of the soil, but I don't want to fall prey and become known as a Bahamian gossiper. I'm only sharing something that I've learned. All right. Okay, back to you, Miss Lockhart.
Well, Mr. Hall, it has been an awesome hour with you. Could you believe that was an hour? And we just getting started, right? So we're going to let you go because we know you have a lot of trust that you need to be writing, and we will be sending you a lot of trust because of this conversation. Mr. Hall, I just want to mention to our viewers that we do have an office here in Nassau, the Bahamas, Kerjovan Estate Planning Company. You can find us in Old Fort Bay. There are a number of advisors here in Nassau. I just happen to be one of them with my husband. You have Miss Deborah Mackey. You have David Curry. I think he's on the live. You have Natasha Young. We're here to help you, and we can give you the information because we have been doing these classes every Saturday and every May we do a full certification. So we have all the information that you need. And then when you're ready, we'll turn you over to Mr. Hall. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Hall, for always being inspiration and so knowledgeable in your area. But the last thing I have to say, this is the last thing. A lot of people say, well, okay, you taught me about the trust. I'm going to go to my lawyer. Mr. Hall, I'm not going to tell them. I want you to answer them. Why shouldn't they go to their lawyer, the same lawyer that never told them about the trust in the first place?
Okay, so once again, Miss Lockhart, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And listen, as a Bahamian, I'm honored to share this information. I thank God that I'm in the field that I'm in and to impart knowledge to people with like minds. As a Bahamian, I believe a lot of us have been, not me so much, but a lot of you have been taken advantage of for a long time. And I use the phrase sometimes judicial character. And what does that mean to me? That means someone in the legal field, a lawyer, a legal professional doing the right thing. As it relates to estate planning, okay, and trust planning, law school doesn't just teach you estate planning or teach you trust planning. You learn the basics, what a trust is, what estate planning is. So if you've got a lawyer for 25, 30 years, it's been your criminal lawyer, your real estate lawyer, your personal injury lawyer, but now all of a sudden you need to put your estate plan in place. You need to put your affairs in order. I'm not telling you that the lawyer that you have, your family member, your cousin, your brother, that you shouldn't go to them. But they, from my experience, are not at capacity with the experience to help you with a complicated issue and the level of sophistication of putting a comprehensive estate plan in place. Okay. If one holds himself out as an estate planning professional or an estate planning attorney with years of experience, then that's the direction I'd point you in. Okay. We all like to say, well, I've got a lawyer, I'm going to go to my lawyer. Your lawyer is not an estate planning attorney. Find someone who is in the estate planning arena, okay, to help you. The word trust, as in estate planning and trust planning, can be as a la carte as going to the restaurant and ordering from the menu. There are many different types of trusts out there. That's all based on what you need for your situation. I haven't even begun to touch what can happen for those of you that may need. I don't want to get back into it, Inky, but I will say this. For those of you that may need a QPRT, a qualified personal residence trust, okay? For many of us getting married, not me, but for many of you getting married for the second or third time, that may be an issue, okay? The person who's going to be knowledgeable like that, it is going to be the estate planning attorney or the estate planning professional, okay? I'm not hitting lawyers, judicial professionals. I'm not beating them up. Even they should advise you. Listen, this is not my cup of tea. I can refer you to my colleague or my friend. This is what he does. This is his area of expertise. Go to the person who holds himself out as an estate planning professional.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. It was wonderful again having you. I am going to jump back on the line because somebody said, what is the difference between a will and a trust? And I know I can handle that myself. So I'm going to leave you with the many degrees to do the hard work that we need you to do. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Hall. Thank you guys for hopping on. Please share the live. And I'm going to be right back to explain the difference between a will and a trust.
And let me say this before I go. Listen, the only thing I want from you today for doing this show, it's just real simple. There's a good friend coming to the U.S. next week. 2 crack conch, an order of conch fritters, and I'm gonna give a plug to the place called Lone Conch, Lone. They're the best. I'm telling you. I want that, and I want some potato bread. Okay. Now there's a lady named Ida Curry. She makes about the best potato bread in the Bahamas. I need you to go to Ida Curry for some potato bread. She just happened to be my sister. So I want the crack conch, the 2 crack conch, the conch fritters, the potato bread. And if you could do some stew conch and put and freeze it and send it over in a little tub. That's all I want.
Yes, sir.
All that only costs you $50. That's not a lot.
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Have a great day.
All right. All right, Inky. Take care.